Hello, everyone. My name is Danny. This review is for Hostiles. Set in 1892, Hostiles tells the story of a legendary army captain who, after stern resistance, reluctantly agrees to escort a dying Cheyenne war chief and his family back to tribal lands, making the harrowing and perilous journey from Fort Beringer, an isolated army outpost in New Mexico, to the grasslands of Montana. The former rivals encounter a young widow whose family was murdered on the plains. Together, they must join forces to overcome the punishing landscape, hostile Comanche, and vicious outliers that they encounter along the way. This is a 2017 movie, rated R. It runs 134 minutes, and when I found that out, I was like, oh man, it's going to be a long movie. It was. It stars Christian Bale and Rosamund Pike and Wes Studi. There's a lot of other people you're going to know in this movie. Just kind of keep watching. You'll recognize that person, that person, that person. So, my first thought going into this was, okay, I'm fine watching army people and Indians kind of tear it apart, and be brutal and go ahead. Cool. All right. I've seen a lot more brutal stuff than this. It was really kind of tame in that way. And I've seen a lot more things that have been more historically informative and accurate than this. It has its own kind of message. Obviously, it's called Hostiles and not just the Indians are hostile. They're part of it, but they're not the only hostiles. So that's where it begins to be any worth of a movie, is when it starts going into the other areas and starting to explore the human emotion and see what kind of human worth Indians actually do have. So for the time, it was tough for that. It was tough for them to do that, being of the time period that they're set in. It's just the way people reacted. They all reacted the same. But so I'll get into my notes, but that's kind of what the movie's kind of about and its struggles that it had to deal with along the way. Right away, I just really got bored with the first scene, with how Christian Bale has to try and act, which sometimes is hard for him. He has to actually try and act like he is not going to go on this trip, because Indians are the scum of the earth and they all deserve to die, and for him to escort this chief Indian up to Montana from New Mexico, which back in those days, you can imagine how hard that would be. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to put in the effort for that, that's for sure. For him to try and act like he wasn't going to do it, and all of us watching the movie know he's going to do it, that was kind of hard to watch. And there's this useless guy in the office. He ends up being the guy that's going to end up taking a picture of him. It's like, oh my gosh, what was he doing in the office? But the colonel actually says, I don't care about your feelings towards Yellow Hawk. And all I said was, I don't either. So let's move on from the scene. We know Christian Bale's going to end up heading this up. Let's go on. And then the colonel ends up saying, I don't care about your feelings. It's like, none of us do either. We're all watching this movie. None of us care about his feelings. So let's just move on. We don't really need that backstory. So we all know everybody back then killed everybody. Let's move on. The next quote I wrote down was, if you sign up to be a soldier, it's your job. I just put no duh. It's like, some of the writing in this was truly, truly horrible. The Colonel and Christian Bale kind of repeated each other a couple times. The Chief and Christian Bale kind of repeat each other a couple times. This one, it's like they're talking about this guy's first kill. He's kind of a green soldier, and he has his first kill of a human being, ending his life. And the other soldier replies with this quote: "If you sign up to be a soldier, it's your job." It's like, where's the human emotion? Where's the conversation? Where's the correct thing to say? Like, they just were over dramatic about their responses, and it's like the people knew they were in a movie. So they had to come up with the most outrageous thing to say. And in this situation, it was, if you sign up to be a soldier, it's your job to kill people. It's like, I just don't know what happened to the writing. It was very weird to listen to these people talk. And there was actually a couple people that I just could not understand. They ended up calling this one guy Frenchie. He dies pretty quick. Couldn't understand a word he said. A lot of what Christian Bale is expected to do is talk low so that he's serious and he's been through a lot and he's this, kind of experienced, kind of older guy that's, seen everything that there is to see. It's just hard to understand him when he talks in the low tone and everything, and he kind of mumbles and he has to act like he's been there and done that, but he has so many other good times where he gets to talk normal, and it's very nice to hear that, but everybody else is a little bit hard to understand, and it gets tough to keep along with it. Plus we have subtitles to follow along with, so it's just kind of hard to stick with. Towards the end, another quote I wrote down was, "You speak the truth." The Chief says that to Christian Bale after he says that they're close to where they're going. The Chief says, "You speak the truth." I'm like, yeah. So we're redundant in our conversation. So if you said something, I don't need to say, "Yep, you're right," or "Yep, that is the way." I mean, I don't think that's really the way that people talked. I know we're talking about a long time ago in our history, and things were a little bit backwards and things were a lot more simpler, but I really don't think they just repeated what each other had to say all the time. I really don't think that's accurate. I think that's totally this movie and the way they wanted to write things, and it was just redundant. It was hard to listen to, people just repeating each other all the time. The ending was pretty pathetic, even though there was kind of a cool shootout at the end. I knew something was building up to something, but the problem with the shootout was they could have gone like a million different ways with the ending, and the way they went was, oh, we got to get a really good action scene here at the end because most of the movie's been pretty much crap. So we got to end it with a whole bunch of people getting shot in a shootout. They could have just had it as a nice ending. They bury this chief and they move on with their lives. It could have been a very nice, simple ending. I would have been just fine with it. Now they stick in these landowners that want them out of there and they all shoot each other. That was just awkward. I mean, everything about this movie, they just want to go over the edge, go to the next step, try and be impressive. You have all these people in your movie. I just felt like somebody was trying to overcompensate. I really do. Everything about this movie just screamed, we're a blockbuster movie. We've got people in our movie that are names, and we got to do this and this and this. And I think they just could have kept it a lot more simple. I enjoyed it for the most part as a movie, and the flow was really good, and the camera work and the scenery, everything was nice. And there was a couple of feel-good moments from this lady and the Indians that they started getting to know each other, and Christian Bale started to have a place in his heart for them. So it had a lot good of human emotion stuff, but it just felt like it was overcompensating. So my last criticism is for the lady in this. She ends up getting really, really crazy. And the reason for it at the beginning is because her family just gets slaughtered. And it's understandable right away. So most movies I see like this, the woman that gets crazy because she just can't handle what's going on the frontier or the farm or in the nunnery or whatever else. They're just kind of classified as a crazy woman, and they're put in a loony bin, or they're told to go back to their parents so they can be watched over for the next 10 years until they snap out of it. I mean, just there's something, there's been different forms of it. How this movie decided to go was to have her actually be a really strong woman once she snaps out of it all of a sudden. And things didn't happen like that back then. Either you handled it when you were in the moment when people die, and then you move on as a strong personality, and you're overcome with grief, which is understandable, but you move on as a strong woman. Or you're just crazy and you fall into one of those categories of needing help or being put away. And so she didn't really fit into anything that I've heard of before or I've experienced with movies. And so she was a tough character to figure out. And I don't think she really had much direction. Obviously, people, knew she was a sort of a name, so they kind of probably just let her kind of run with it. But the fact that she ends up trying to shoot this one guy 15 times, and at the end she starts the shootout, and in the beginning of the movie she's overcome with grief that she doesn't even know what to say, and she acts like a total crazy nut. She's a very complex character and kind of confusing. I'd have to say she's the worst actor in the movie for me, and I'm sorry to say that, but the way she had her face looking when somebody's trying to compliment her, she had her mouth kind of slightly open and her eyebrows raised like that. I can't even do the face, but she does this weird face, and then she says thank you for the compliment. It's just the weirdest thing, and I just did not like her. She didn't seem to fit in here, and her character was very back and forth. So obviously she ends up kind of liking Christian Bale, which is even more confusing after, back then I guess you had to take a husband if you could find one, anybody still alive. So just a lot of things didn't make sense with her. So my rant's over. I'm going to give Hostels C-, and I sat through it. I enjoy movies like this. I expect them to be a little bit more brutal, but there have been some really brutal ones, so I can deal with this one being a little bit more tame. So I enjoy Christian Bale. I just don't appreciate him connecting himself to kind of crappy movies. He can be as good as he wants to be, but that doesn't make the movie with everybody around him kind of being awful. So C- for Hostels. Give it a watch. And thanks for watching my review. My name's Danny. If you like this or any of my other videos, like and subscribe to my channel if you would. And thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy your movies.